Are we going? Is it live?
It's live.
Can you hear me? Hello? Hi, it's me. I know I posted that mid-morning I was going to do a cool review and bow build of the new Hoyt ProForce. And this bow is pretty cool. And there's a whole bunch of new stuff that they've done, and I'm going to try to walk through this and show you all the cool new things. Then I'm going to set it up, and just so that you can kind of see what I do when I take the bow out of the box. And this isn't the normal kind of bow that I shoot. I shoot, pretty much pure target bows. This one's kind of a performance speed bow geared toward 3D shooters, and but I think it's going to be pretty cool. Just pulling it back, I've had this bow for like 2 weeks, and I have been dying to set it up and shoot it, but I wanted to do this bow build. I've never done a live bow build before, so this could be great. It could be really not great, but we'll just go all the way through it and see what happens. So here's what I'm going to put on. Of course, I have to put on one of Colby's Ultra View grips. Gotta have that, right? In green. It's awesome. I'm going to put a Hamskea FollowAway rest. Now, I've had a few people notice that I've been shooting a Hamskea every now and then, and Hamskeas are not typical of a target rest, but a few of the cool kids, Tim Gillingham, David Hauser, a few of them are shooting FollowAway rest for target, and they're having great results. So I decided this year to shoot a FollowAway rest, and I did extensive testing outdoors, A and B. I shoot the blade for a little while, shoot the FollowAway for a little while, and back and forth. And my groups have been significantly tighter, and my scores have been a good bit higher with the FollowAway rest. And I think it's mainly due just because of great fletching clearance. So the Hamskeas have been just bulletproof, and they've been super solid and super easy to tune. So I'm going to set one on this bow too and do the initial testing. This bow really is sort of an outdoor bow. It's fast, it'd be great for shooting outside at distance, 50 meters, 3D, whatever. But since it's indoor season, I'm going to set this up as an indoor bow initially, but I still have to go outside and shoot it at 50 meters to see how I like it. This new ZT cam, the HyperZT cam, is an 80% let-off cam, and that's not normal for what I shoot for target archery, but I'm going to give it a go. I'm going to open mind and give it a try. This cam is different. Check this out. So take a look at this track right here. You notice that there's 2 tracks, and you see the cable is split in half here. This is an innovation that Hoyt has added to this cam here to balance the load on the cam all the way through the draw cycle so that you don't get the torsion of the limb and you don't give that give and take between the string side and the cable side, the constant walking of the cam angles and that sort of stuff when you pull the bow back to full draw. So I'm pretty sure this is going to be cool. And notice this track, that 3D there and the track. At full draw, or at rest, it's a little wider, but then at full draw, it comes closer together, so it kind of balances the left-right load on the cam as it comes around to full draw. So I think this is going to be super cool, and I am super excited to test it. One more thing on the limbs, you'll notice the limbs. Let's see, I don't know if you heard that alarm or not. That means it's time to pick up the kids. See that little reinforcement that they have there on the limb? They add this before they put the axle hole through the limb there. And they put this in, and it's set in place, and then they put the hole through the limb. And one of the things Hoyt does a lot of destructive testing. And essentially what they do is they'll make a new bow setup. They'll dry fire it. They'll, 1,500 times. They'll run over it. They do all sorts of stuff. And they notice that if someone has like a catastrophic failure, like a huge limb explosion or whatever, it is possible for the cam to come loose from the limb if the ends of the limbs crack. So by adding this little reinforcement here to the limb, that eliminates the chance of this axle and cam coming separate from the limb, and we don't have any flying parts if we were unlucky enough to have a serious bow failure. It keeps this bow together and will minimize the danger if the bow were to break. Another thing is the limb pocket. Notice the stance of the limb here is much wider on the bottom, and I'm going to flip this around, is much wider on the bottom than it is the top. Now that does a couple of things. One, it's wider to accommodate the width of the cam here. But another thing that it does is this adds a little extra weight to the bottom of the bow, because the center of the bow here, right? Normally the center of Hoyt bows used to be here. Well, they have lowered this down to get the arrow in the middle of the bow. So with the arrow in the middle of the bow here, it makes it a lot easier to tune. It's a lot more balanced. And by adding this extra weight, a little bit bigger pocket, they've got some dampers here on the bottom. And if you look closely, there's a little bullet inside of the damper there to make that a little heavier. So that just adds a little bit more weight to the bottom, so you don't have that weird top-heavy feel that you get with bows that have the arrow centered in the bow. I think they did a fantastic job setting it up that way. So I'm pretty excited about this, and I'm ready to put this together. I ordered it custom with green limbs, green riser. So how hot is that? All right. So another little custom thing that you can do, I was talking to the factory guys about this, is that this is a 12-inch limb on this bow, and it has a 7-inch brace height. You can custom order this through the custom shop. We have a light just fell. Hey, Jacob, will you help her pick that up? A light just fell. We're going to pick that up right quick. Wipe through my paper tester. You know, this is the kind of stuff that happens when you're like, you know, is it hooked on it? Yeah. All right. So I also have new studio lights because I intend to do a lot more instructional videos. Rhonda, you're straddling that wire. That's how it came. Move it a little closer, Jacob, so the wire has some slack in it. So watch, yeah, that's good. So watch your feet on that wire there, Rhonda. So I forgot where I was when the light fell. Jacob, anyway. So take a look at what I'm going to put on here. I'm going to put a Hamskea peep in there. I love this peep. I have been using it all year, and it is absolutely fantastic. I have noticed that with the Hamskea peep, other peeps with a clarifier lens, it can be pretty clear, but I've noticed that this Hamskea peep is more clear even without the clarifier. But for 3D, I'm going to put the weakest clarifier, the A. I'm going to put that into the peep just so that I have a little bit more clear sight picture, and start off with that. And of course, I'm going to use the Blaze loops, torqueless D-loop. You can get these from LancasterArchery.com. Blaze Roughing is one of our team members with the Hornets. And he builds these loops and uses the money that he makes selling these little loops to everybody through Lancaster. He uses these loops to pay for his archery travel. So buy a bunch of loops from Lancaster, and I'll explain more about why I use this loop here in a minute when I get farther into the bow build.
Okay, we were reminded you were going to talk about the longer limbs.
Oh, yeah, I was talking about the limbs when the light went down. So these limbs are 12 inches, and it has a 7-inch brace height. You can also custom order this with an 11-inch limb, which will give it a 6-inch brace height, and you get like 12 feet per second more. So if you want something that's super high performance and fast, you can custom order that with a shorter limb and a lower brace height. So if you're into that sort of thing, you could make this thing a pretty hot setup. So I'm going to stick with just the factory setting, and I'm going to do just a out-of-the-box, quick put together on the bow, just as I would any other bow. I'm not going to customize anything. I'm not going to put new strings on it. I'm not going to do any of that. I'm just going to pull it out of the box, bolt the stuff on, do a quick basic tune through the paper, and I'll just take it out on the range and sight it in and just shoot it for a little while, just to kind of get an idea how the bow feels and how it does, you know, when I shoot it. So later, once I get to know the bow a little bit, I'll change the strings to something way cool and you know, tweak it out just a little bit more. But typically I can get an idea of how much I like a bow and how easy it is to tune and all that, just pulling it out of the box and just setting the thing up. So I'm going to put an Axel sight on there. I'm going to put my contour rods. I love these things. They're super stiff and crazy light. I'm going to put these on, and this balance that I have here with the weights, this is just right off of my Prevail bows. So I don't have any idea what this bow wants, so I got to shoot it for a little while to see. But initially, I'm just going to set it up like one of my Prevails, and we're going to see how it goes. So here we go. Do we have any questions going yet?
Not yet.
How many people are watching at the moment?
106.
Okay, well, there's a few people out there. So I'll answer your questions as we go here. Now, also notice that I'm using the standard fingers with my Last Chance Archery press. And with the standard fingers here, I can press this bow, and it doesn't take a whole lot of pressure. You see, just the tiniest little bit, and I can relax the strings on the bow, so it doesn't take a whole lot of pressure to press it. And oh, one more thing that's notable. Take a look here. This, until they told me about it, I totally missed this, but look at these new string anchors. They are kind of a teardrop shaped, and they're marked with an S or a C. S means string side of the cam, C means cable side of the cam, and if you look closely, they're different thicknesses, and they did that for a reason. That different thickness is so you can have the same number of twists on both cables, and when you change the timing on this bow, because it has this cool little balance system here, when you change the timing on the bow, you have to twist the yoke, so you'll twist it half a turn or a turn, when you put twists in the yokes, and keep that balance. So you'll take them off, put a twist in it, take this one off, put a twist in it, like that. So change the timing up here so that you don't end up goofing this up down here. So stay away from this side, do all of your adjustments up here. But another thing is, notice they have another like 3D track here. And if you've ever had, you know, those square-edged spacers that kind of nick your cables, or over time they wear out a little bit, this 3D track here kind of resists that, and it makes that point directly down at the V, so we don't end up with a whole bunch of wear and tear on our cables. Oh, another thing, I'm remembering all this as I go because I didn't write notes. We were late getting this going, so on that.
There's a few questions.
Okay. So these limbs here, last year on the Defiance, what you got there, Rhonda? Something happening to it? Okay. On the Defiance, the limbs were kind of preloaded to open. So it was a little hard to work on with the limbs set up to be open, and you had to pull them together to put the E-clips on. These are set to the opposite, so they're preloaded to the inside so that you can spread those a little bit when you're working on these and putting the spacers in and that sort of thing. So this will make it way easier to work on than the previous limb system. So I'm pretty excited about that too. Jacob says we got a couple questions. What do we got over there?
All right. First off, Dan Moorhead says, you make your own strings, or can you recommend someone?
Dan, I make my own strings, and it's not because I dislike anybody else's strings, but I don't have a lot of time usually, and when I need a set of strings, I need a set of strings now. So typically I will just go ahead and make myself a set of strings and just get it done that way. But I'm not going to recommend anybody because there's a whole bunch. But however, that brings something to mind. Hoyt says use fused strings on their bows, and they say don't use aftermarket strings, use their strings, and I'm pretty sure they have to say that in order to cover themselves if somebody was to use a substandard set of strings and they were to fly apart. So if you're concerned about that, Fuse makes strings in all sorts of crazy colors, and you'll find the factory strings are really great now. So I'm going to go ahead and start putting stuff. Is any more questions over there?
Yeah.
Okay.
Jacob Guthrie says, can you hit on the split cable on the bottom? I noticed a wedge.
Okay, noticed a wedge. What wedge is? I guess he's talking about this little bit right here. Right? And that is a separator so that it splays this apart so that the cables are aligned with the tracks in the cam. So that way this part hooks up, it goes through this bit here and goes back down to the other side there. And that's so that they can balance the pressure. And this is the same thing on the Redworks bows as well. So I'm really excited to try this on the shorter hunting bows. I bet broadhead flight is going to be just like... So I can't wait to try that out. Oh, and they've updated the cable roller system, which is excellent. I really didn't love the flexible cable bar that they had in there, and I really like that these are static now, and this is much shorter, so there won't be any bending or flex when you pull that to full draw. So what else do we have?
Andrew Munsell says, will you be shooting the factory strings?
I'm going to start off with the factory strings for sure, and I'll shoot it a bunch, and eventually I have to have some way cool green strings on there to match the green bow. So I think eventually I might make a set of strings for myself, but right now I'm going to shoot it straight up factory strings and just give it a go. Incidentally, my Prevail FX that I got in last year, yeah, it was last year, I pulled it out of the box, factory strings, did this whole factory setup, and right out of the box, it was shooting so good, it still has the factory strings on it right now. And I have shot a gazillion arrows through it with factory strings. I didn't have any need to take it apart, so I don't have any problem with recommending factory strings for you guys to just leave them on and shoot them until they show wear. And then once they start to be a little worn, maybe replace them with something cool later. But right now, I'm not just going to take this bow apart and put new strings on it just because. I want to shoot it as they intend it to be, straight from the factory, so I can kind of use this bow, you know, like they want it to be used. So I think it'd be pretty cool to do that. So I'm going to start off. I'm going to go ahead and replace the grip. And I know it's not factory and all that, but I love a 10-degree grip angle. And I like that because it makes my hand or my forearm a little bit more relaxed with a little less tension at full draw. This low grip angle, I end up with a lot of tension right here, which makes the bow unsteady with any of that extra tension. So a slightly higher grip angle works well for me. So I'm going to take this off. If you noticed, the first Allen wrench that I grabbed wasn't the right size Allen wrench. You would think after a lifetime of working with compound bows and Allen wrenches that I'd be able to grab the right size Allen wrench the very first time, but it just doesn't work out that way for me. I grab the wrong one every time. It's kind of like the USB cable. You know, you right side up, it's wrong. Upside down, it's wrong. Turn it back right side up, and then it fits. So pick the wrong Allen wrench. We got any other questions here?
Let's see here. Christian, can't really pronounce the last name, says, what are your tuning processes for the bow start to last tune for outdoor?
Oh, the Christian says, what are my tuning processes from start to finish? Well, the first thing, Christian, I'm just going to shoot a hole through the paper. I'm not going to get too super techy. I'm just going to shoot a hole through the paper and go, yeah, the arrow is flying straight out of the bow. And then I'm just going to shoot it a little bit because I can't really say what stabilizer system it needs. I can't say whether if it's beautifully tuned or not until after I've shot the bow for a little while and gotten a really good feel for how I shoot with the bow and how it groups. And then once I get used to shooting the bow a little bit, I can then start long range group tuning and that sort of thing. But initially I will shoot a hole through the paper. I may creep tune just to get my timing exactly right. In the manual they'll say set it dead even or if anything, maybe a 1/16 ahead, you know, on the top. I usually start with mine set dead even, and then I'll creep tune to find the exact spot. If you search Griv creep tune on Google, you can find a full instruction sheet on how to do that. And that way you can find the exact spot to have your timing set so the bow works for you and you get the greatest forgiveness, even if you're a little leaky with pressure at full draw. So I got my grip changed. Now I'm going to bolt my arrow rest on here. Let's just unfurl this string. They got a little black rubber band on here. The Hamskea rest has been fantastic for me, and with the clearance that I get with my X10s, I just absolutely love it. So I'm going to start off with this on this bow as well. And I'm going to just bolt that on, and I'm going to eyeball that straight. That looks pretty straight, right about there. And I will tighten that baby down. Okay, and that's pretty well set. And I'll worry about wiring up the cable a little bit later. I'm going to leave this rest in the up position while I work on setting my knocking point and that sort of stuff there. I just put this bench together to use in my bow builds and things like that. I don't have my last chance easy vise on here yet, so I'm trying to kind of do this handheld. But I'm going to set the knocking point here, and some of you may be shocked and appalled when you see me not use a laser or anything on this. And I'm not going to use a laser of any kind. I'm just going to eyeball this thing level and be a archery heretic. Click on that alarm. It will give you an option to just hit stop, and it'll stop. Let's see. My 2:30 alarm, so that I don't forget my kids, continues to go off here. But we're just going to muddle our way through this here. And without my bow vise, I'm just a little bit, I need 3 hands here. So I'm going to take this and just hold it in the press right quick. All right, just for a split second, while I can get this tied, I'm just going to tie an overhand knot in it just to get it started. And I'm going to kind of just eyeball that. And I'll just do that right there and then take it out and take a look at it. See where I need to be. I'm really missing my easy vise here. I'm going to slide that up just a little bit. And I'm just going to, it's easier to eyeball the knocking point with the sight bar on there, because I can kind of use the sight bar as a gauge here. But I don't have that on here yet, so I'm just going to I'm going to sort of do that right there and go, yeah, that looks pretty good. And I'm going to pull that tight so it'll stay. And you notice I used an arrow here without a point on it. And that's so that the point won't weigh down the arrow rest or bend the blade if you have a blade rest. So it just kind of helps make sure that you can eyeball that knocking point position right where you need that to be. So the way I'm going to make my knocks here is, Rhonda, you can get a little closer and give them just a little bit of a detail, is I'm really just going to do a series of overhand knots here, like so. And I'll run a few on here so that it'll stay. Any questions over there, Jacob?
Yeah.
All right, what do we got?
Do you think that will come with a lower let-off option?
I don't know. I didn't ask them whether if they were intending on a lower let-off option. I would love one. I'm a little bit of a traditionalist. I grew up with low let-off bows, and the 80% cams are a little tough for me because I'm just not used to shooting them. But I'm going to give it a try and just see how it does. I do know that more holding weight at full draw tends to make a bow a little bit more forgiving to mistakes. Like if you have a little bit of face contact on the string, or if you have a bad release or something like that, typically a higher holding weight will sort of conceal that error just a little bit. So now I've run this now for, I don't know, almost a 1/4 inch or so. And I'm going to just finish it off with the end of a square knot here. And then I'll tighten that puppy down. Grab my little cutters here, and I'll just flush cut that. Right so. I didn't put a trash can back here, so I'll just use that drawer as my trash can for right now. And then I'm just going to burn the ends of this. Notice I burned it with the bowstring horizontal, because when I do the flame goes up. If you make a mistake and it's standing up in the press and then you do this and you burn the string, so I've made that mistake before. So I thought I'd just point that out. And then we have our torqueless D-loop. Get those from LancasterArchery.com. You can search Blaze Loops. So here's how I install this. You see, I've put the 2 loops together, like so. And then I'm going to just feed this. I'm going to try to do it in a way that you can see what I'm doing. Feed this through itself, just like so. And then I'm going to get that. And then, boom, it's installed. All set and ready to rock. Now I'll tie this in once I have my peep sight set, and I will tie that in so that the D-loop can manage the orientation of my peep sight. So when I snap the arrow onto the string here, and I'll just, see, I'm using biter nocks. If you'll notice that a biter nock, you see when I tilt that, the biter nock is set up so that the string is flush inside the nock at full draw. So you don't end up, by grabbing the string under the nock, you don't end up with pinching the nock off of the string like you would with a standard nock. So I love biter nocks for that. You don't end up with pressure down against the arrow rest and some of the other issues that you have if you have an under D-loop or a torqueless D-loop like this. So there we go. I have just a teeny tiny bit of wiggle room in there with a biter. You don't need a whole lot. So I'm just going to leave that right there for now. And then I'm going to stick my hamski in. But first, I'm going to put the glass in the peep before I put it in the string, because that makes it just a little bit easier. I'm going to use the 364 because I'm setting it up for indoors. So I use a small peephole. Indoors, you got to use this tiny peephole, the smallest one that you can look through, and because that it clarifies your scope really well, and it increases your accuracy. So notice I've got the A. You see the designation here. I'm going to line that A up with the notch right there in the peep, and then I'm going to install the glass in the peep like so that my glass doesn't get in there crooked and I can't accidentally, break the glass or whatever. And the reason that I oriented the A, this glass is optically centered, so it doesn't really matter a whole lot what the rotation is, but I line the A up anyway, just to make sure if I ever have to take it out of the bow and clean it or something and then put it back in, I just keep the orientation the same, just in case. So I'm going to get my little biter string separator. I'm going to take my, I know from my target bow that my peep sight is around, it's around 4 5/8 to the center of my peep. So I'm going to put it through right about here. I'm going to put it through right about there. So I'm going to, whoop, wrong way. How many times do I do that in a day? Let make sure I got myself all centered up here. There we go. There we go. And then I'm gonna use my little string separator here just to open this up just a little bit. I probably use my fingernails just a little bit better now that the string is relaxed. Maybe a little more. Get all the gray ones on one side and all the white ones on the other. I'll put this down. I don't really need that right now. So with this being live, you can see all the dumb mistakes, like when I scratch it with an Allen wrench or drop it in the bow press, you know, that kind of fun stuff. So I'm going to stick the peep in. Now, I still haven't figured out exactly how to make sure that I get this Hamskea peep at the right string angle. I'm going to guess that I need it in this set of grooves right here. I guess I don't have good enough spatial acuity to make sure that I get the right grooves, but I'm going to pull it to full draw and test it a little bit later to make sure. And you see now that I have the peep in, I'm going to measure that to make sure I've got it in the spot that I want to start with. And because this bow is kind of new and I'm not used to this string angle or this cam type, I might end up changing the peep height, but I'm going to just set it here for right this minute, just for the sake of testing. Man, butterfingers. There. Make sure that the peep is in there and I don't have any rogue strands. And then reach dental tape. I use dental tape to tie in all of my peep sights because it's waxed, kind of like the string, and it stays really well. I use the same over-under tie that I use when I make my knocking point. I'll just pull that tight, tie it underneath. It's critically important that before you do anything, that you tie a peep sight right around the girdle of the peep like this. Even if you don't know where you're going to put it or anything, see, this is still movable. I can still move it, but this makes sure that the peep stays in the string. If I were to shoot this bow and the peep were to fly out the string, this thing becomes a bullet and it's aimed right at my eyeball. So I always make sure that I tie this peep in before I even pull the bow back to make sure that it's in there and it's not going to come flying out of the string. It's pretty dangerous. So I'm going to just trim that with my cutters, throw it in my little trash drawer right there, and then again I'm going to just melt the dental tape like so, and that holds that in place and we're all set to go there. So now I'll change the orientation of my D-loop to make sure that the D-loop is oriented with the peep sight, so when I draw that back it comes straight to my eye. More dental tape. Dental tape is the good for all bow mechanicking needs.
You get done with that. There's a good few questions.
Okay, go ahead. Just jump right in with the questions. You can just butt in anytime you want.
Got you. Okay. Matt Ashley, roughing. What's your favorite material to use for setting the knocking point?
I just use anything. To be honest with you, Matt, I just grab whatever material that I have. This is some number 21 size BCY material. I think it's called, it's 21 and it's 62XS, and it works pretty good for a top knocking point. I like that a lot. What else we got?
Chris Bachman says...
So get a closer look at this here. This is one little bit here. I'm going to thread it through the torqueless D-loop. Let me see here. So this next tie-in, you see I'm straddling the inside of the loop. I'm going to make sure that I'm still straight. I'm just kind of tying. Chris Bachman says...
He says, I assume the loops have issues when the string rotates the peep.
The loop if you set it before you put the peep in, you may have to untie it and then reset it. But it's just like any other D-loop. You may have to change the orientation of the loop if it doesn't match up with the peep when you pull it back to full draw. So what else we got?
Colby Hanley says, does the ProForce come with 3D dampening technology?
The ProForce does not, or at least it does not say in their catalog, Colby, that it has any fake science or any other type things. I know you've been beating the bandwagon on the whole 3D dampings and the dampens in the third dimension and all that stuff, but you'll find that Hoyt's technical manual and the things that they say that this bow will do is pretty legit without a lot of hyperbole and fluff. Like my coffee mug has 3D holding capability, so therefore the liquid forms completely to the mug. I think that's what you said in one of your posts on the internet. I thought that was pretty funny. What else we got?
Robert Guy says, are the tune charts available yet?
I haven't. I checked online today, and I didn't see that the tune charts were there. It looks like it's still 2017 is the highest, on the list, but I would expect it won't be too long. I'm sure they're spending most of their time getting these bows out of the factory and hadn't stopped long enough to put the tune charts online. So usually they're a month or 3-4 weeks behind. The bows being released is when they're gonna, put the tune charts up. Take a close look at this. Now this material, I use 8190 to tie my D-loops. So it's a fast flight zero Vectran material, so therefore it won't kind of chew itself in two. And you see my dental tape here. I'm gonna use the heat from the flame and then just warm that up just a little bit and carefully warm that up so that the wax kind of bonds that a little bit with the serving so that it'll stay there. So be cautious because this Spectra material, or Dyneema or Spectra material that the D-loops are made out of, it is flammable. So if you get too close and you singe it, you should just replace it because it's not going to last. All right, let's see. What else have I got? I need to bolt my sight on. I need to put my gripper on. I have the gripper made by my buddy Peter Grip from Sweden, and he sold this to AAE, and they have made a few improvements to it. And the gripper is by far my absolute favorite stabilizer mount of all time because you set it and it does not move. I would love to have a big washer behind this, but I didn't set that up, so I'm gonna just go with that for now and just tighten that puppy up right there. And notice Hoyt has a little screw here. They make a rear stabilizer mount that has a little notch in it that you can put the screw through so that this will never turn. But I've noticed that if you put a socket head cap screw in this hole, it'll stop just about any of these from turning on you once you have some weight on them. So what other questions have we got, Jacob?
Frank McDonough wants to know if you have to use a longer knock with a torqueless D-loop.
You don't have to use a longer knock. Biters, because it has that asymmetric design, you can use any of their knocks. Now, if you're using an Easton knock, say a G knock or a 3D super knock or something like that, if you have a long draw length or a very steep string angle, when you get to full draw, some of those knocks may pinch off of the string. So make sure that you do use one with longer ears on the knock so that it won't pinch off. But if you have a draw length like 29 and under, it's not critical. The Easton microlight knocks on shorter axle-to-axle bows, this bow is just under 36 inches axle-to-axle, and it should be okay. But 35-inch bows, 32-inch bows, a microlight knock, which is another favorite, is they'll pinch off the string. But the biters, you got no problems with biter asymmetric knocks. So go with those. You'll love them. And let's see, I got my stabilizer mount on there. Let me get my bow out and I'll
Were your limbs specially made for you?
They were painted for me. Anyone can order this option for the limbs through the factory. It's not something special that they did just for me. Anyone can get any of the colors. If you look in the back page of the catalog, you'll see what the available options are. And I believe it's $200. I think it's $150 or $200 for a custom upcharge. They will put whatever color limbs that you want to match up. You know, I have a blue Prevail with blue limbs. I have a red Prevail with red limbs. I've seen Sergio Pagni's bow are blue with orange limbs and orange with blue limbs. They're absolutely gorgeous. If you look up PJ Deloche, some of his bows, so he has beautiful pictures of his bows online. Some have colored limbs and some don't, so you can check those out. Okay, I got my sight on there, XL, CXL. Okay, I'm using a biter scope with a Feather Visions lens, and it has a biter pin in it right there. And that pin, I can pull that out and change my dot size on the fly based on how well I want to see what I'm aiming at, or if I just want to cover it up and shoot a clean shot. So take a look at that. Let's see, I'm just going to arbitrarily set this sight right about here. And I can do torque tune and find out exactly where to position the extension of this sight. That's a whole other video that you'll find on my website here one of these days. But right now, I'm just going to stick with I'm just going to guess it right there. And I'm going to tie my arrow rest cord to the bottom. Oh, first I better set the left and right of this. You know what?
Hog or Hamsky rest?
This is a Hamsky.
No, like which one? Like he said versus.
What do you mean versus? I don't understand the question.
He says like why Hamsky versus Spot Hog?
Well, you know why? The dudes at Hamsky are pretty awesome. I've known them for quite a while, and it's not that I'm choosing, you know, one manufacturer over the other because everybody but this one is junk. I mean, they're all good stuff. But the guys at Hamsky are pretty awesome, and this rest is pretty bulletproof. And I've been a little skeptical of FollowAway rests. You know, 2 years ago, I would have said never, ever, ever use a FollowAway rest for target archery. But I'm kind of changing my mind. So I've tested several different FollowAways, and I really like this one. I like its adjustability. I can set the string tied to the top limb very easily. I can set the string to the bottom limb very easily. So it's fairly malleable in its setup, and I feel pretty confident in it being totally bulletproof because this thing is pretty beefy if you just take a look at that there. And I love the fact that they have the spring. The string is spring mounted here, so it's not quite so hard on the arrow rest. You know, with the constant shooting, that spring kind of acts as a little shock absorber there, and it keeps the rest from being banged up. So I'm going to show you a little trick. And Rhonda, try to get around here. If you walk around this side and try to get around here, I'm going to try to show everybody. Or tell you what, just let me hold the phone. I'm going to show you how I center the bow. So I center the bow not by looking behind it like this and kind of lining everything up. So if you just take a look, you know, right here, and then kind of center it right behind, you can kind of see where the arrow is, and I'll sort of line everything up like so. I found a different way. So check this out. I'm going to hold it down here, and you see where I can center the arrow rest, or the arrow with the string like so, and I can look down here and make sure that the string is centered this way. And then if I go up and I look over the top of the cam like so, I can see the arrow sticking out above right there. So I can check both this way, and I can see if the arrow is centered with the bow, and I have better luck at getting a first shot bullet hole when I center the arrow rest by looking down, you know, on the bow like this. It's kind of hard to do looking at the screen, but you can see that looks pretty centered right there just as it sits, but I'm going to double check it. I'm going to hand the phone back to Rhonda here, and I'm going to double check that. Let's see, there you go. Hope I didn't stop it by fat fingering the, and I'm just going to hold this up and just kind of eyeball it. And man, that looks pretty dang good, just for like arrow rest right out of the box. That's pretty good. I'm going to move it out just a hair. Where did my little short wrench go? Here it is. I'm going to move it out just a hair. Let's see. If you move the hamskey knob toward yourself, the arrow rest moves out. So I'm going to check it and just look right over the top of the bow. It's easier to see this with a Prevail because the limb angle is much higher. So the arrow is long enough to stick out far enough to where you can see it. I'm going to move that out just a little bit more. My goal here, the bench test at Archery Learning Center, is if you want to be a bow tech here, you have to be able to set up a bow, put the basic accessories on it, and walk over to the paper and get a pretty dang good hole from the start. And that includes proper arrow selection, making sure you have the arrow rest centered, you got the knocking point right, that whole bit. And the bow is a basic tune so that if you can set a bow up and then walk through and just boom, and the first shot's pretty close to a bullet hole, maybe minor adjustments, that you know your stuff, and I'll let you work on bows here. Now, of course, just getting a hole through the paper just says, yes, the arrow is flying straight out of the bow. And that's all that bare shaft planning with a bow says as well. Yes, the arrow is flying straight out of the bow. But it doesn't mean that it's tuned. And once you have shot groups with that bow and you have made adjustments and tested for tighter groups by making minor adjustments to arrow rest and knocking point over several different groups at distance, well, then you could say that your bow is perfectly tuned. Often when I go outside and shoot my bows and really have a nice day, if I have a nice still day and I can go out there and kind of tweak it out and work on it till I get the best groups, often my bow does not shoot a bullet hole. Now, I'm speaking purely target archery here, because if you get a bare shaft to fly dead straight out of a hunting bow, you can get a broadhead to fly dead straight out of a hunting bow. And dead straight broadhead flight, broadheads grouping with your field tips at all capable distances is critical with your hunting bow for the deepest penetration and the cleanest opportunity for kills and short blood trails. Let me just take a look at that now that I have the sight on. It looks like it's a hair bit high, so I'm going to lower it just a smidge. I'm a little nervous because I haven't done a straight up bow setup and walked straight to the paper without pre-testing it or anything on video. So we're all seeing this together at the same time, and I'm going to do my best eyeball setup. And if you take a look, how does that look? Does that look pretty level to you from a distance? What do you think, Rhonda?
Yeah,
It looks pretty decent. Okay, so I'm going to pop this off, and I'm going to set up my arrows. What do we have for questions now, Jacob?
I mean, if you want Gaius and Colby's questions.
Why not? Give me Gaius's question.
Here, let me go to the top.
Yeah, go for the top. Let's hear the legit customer questions first, and then I'll have fun with Gaius and Colby later.
Colby wants to know why you're putting the gripper on the lower mount. He says you're the top mountain kind of guy.
Oh, I do like the top mount, but I didn't prepare myself to put the top mount. I didn't prepare myself with like a quick disconnect or something like that to put the top mount up here, but I really do like having it up here in line with the stabilizer. I find that I get better tunes that way, and I also find I get better bow balance that way. So ultimately this may end up being up here in the upper hole. But for now, I'm going to put it down here just for testing. I'm going to check it out right down there. So what else we got?
Mike Cooper wants to know what the drawings options are for the bow.
That's a good question. So give me a second. Let me stick this little sticker on here. And this little sticker is how I get my hamski to fit here. I put the little sticker on, and now I'm gonna loosen up my little doodad here that holds the string. I'll loosen that up just a little bit and pull the string out of it. Make a little noose here, just like that, and put it around the limb. I'm going to do it to the outside here instead. I want it to go this way. What else we got for questions while I'm doing this?
Gase wants a drop test.
No, there'll be no drop test. Eli Hughes has already chipped my brand new green limbs. He tossed me a bow stand and chipped it already, so it already has its first ding, so I can relax now about the pressure of keeping it pristine. So what else?
Just Gase. How much will this bow add to my bench press game?
As in, is it heavy?
Yeah, like, cause it's
It
your
doesn't.
bow.
You know what? I don't think it weighs that much more than my Prevail. I don't remember what the factory weight was, but it doesn't weigh that much more than my Prevail did. So I don't expect it to be heavy. Is there any other?
Nope, we're all caught up.
So even if you scroll backwards, there's none that scroll by.
I think we got 'em.
Man, I am the greatest presenter in the world. Nobody ever has any questions. I wish that were really true, but I like to think it. So there we go.
Here we go.
So I'm going to tighten that up. I've got just a little bit of spring tension in here in the arrow rest. I'll tighten that baby down. Okay. I'm just going to leave this tag in hanging here until I decide what I'm going to do with it. But just for the sake of testing, I can just put this on here like that. So I think I'm ready.
Are you using a stock grip?
I'm not using stock grip. Look, I've got UltraView grip on there. It's 10 degrees. That's a little higher than the highest stock Hoyt grip. The highest stock Hoyt grip is 6, and Colby's UltraView grip is 10 and 15. You can get 10 or 15, or Colby will make custom grip angles for you, and he'll write your name in it. He'll do all kinds of. I'm using the Last Chance Archery tungsten weights. This right here is 24 ounces, I believe, of weight, and instead of it being this long, it's this long because tungsten is quite a bit heavier. Each one of these is 3 ounces instead of 1 ounce. So those are, I love these things because I've got less weight sticking out in front of the stabilizer. Well, I say less weight profile. The weight, the actual heft is the same. This is the first time I've had stabilizers on this thing, and you know, that feels pretty nice. I need to get some limb saver, some green limb saver doodads to match the bow, and man, this thing will be all decorated out and super pretty. Often people ask me how far out do I want to set this bar, and I wish I had a technical explanation for that, but I do want it to be out, and I want it to be out because you notice I won't put this thing in a gimbal and make the bow absolutely perfectly balanced, because a perfect balance isn't what it is that you want. The reason why is if a bow is perfectly balanced, just the tiniest little push and the bow will readily move in any direction if it has perfect balance. So what I do is I open the way out from the bow a little bit. You can kind of see how far out I've got it set there. I open the bow out away from the weight out away from the bow a little bit just to put a little holding bias So instead of having to hold the bow at full 360 degrees balance, I'm just holding the bow balanced in one direction. So yes, when I raise the bow up, it feels like it wants to do this, but after a while, my brain kind of gets used to it, and I can hold it straight up and down, and I'm holding against force. So it's kind of a bias of stabilization there that helps me hold the bow steady with less mental effort. And that's part of what group tuning does with your bow, is it puts a slight tuning bias in the bow that makes it more forgiving for your shooter mistakes. So that having a little bias in your stuff in different places through tuning or stabilization will help you be more still. So I'm going to walk out here, and I'm just going to, you know what, I better double check the weight and the draw length first. I didn't do that. Let me figure out what the weight is on this sucker. First drawback. It's really high let off. 62 pounds just stock. And let me measure the draw length and see where we are there. I'm going to use always make sure that you put the little brown cord or the little orange cord on your hook here to make sure that if we have any accidents here. Let me try to do this without dropping everything.
You good for a few questions?
Yeah, go ahead.
Brandon McDonough wants to know if you're presenting at the LAS Classic again this year.
I'm not set yet to present at Lancaster. I may. I'll for sure be presenting at the ATA show. And if I'll have a conversation before long with the people, Rob and his people that host Lancaster. And I will, if they need me, I'll present there as well. So I'm going to measure the draw length and take a close look here. I'm going to start the tape measure at 1 3/4 in the middle of the arrow rest mounting hole. I almost called it the burger hole. But the arrow rest mounting hole. And then I'm going to measure to the string. And oh yeah, this sucker is set on 29 inches or 29 and a half. It's measuring 29 3/8 right now. So I need to move this down a couple of notches to suit my little short arm 28-inch draw. I'm glad that I double checked the draw length here. And someone asked what the available draw lengths are. I'm going to show you something cool. It's just a little addition that the Hoyt guys put in the limb sticker that I think is the coolest thing that they could have done for all of us dealers. Let me take these off so that I can adjust the draw length. Let me lay these over here so they don't move.
Sean Pruitt wants to know the torqueless D-loop is really that much better than the conventional.
For me, the torqueless D-loop is that much better, and I highly recommend it. The reason why is when I draw this bow back to full draw right up here next to my face, this is a much smaller package right up here, and it helps me get the string up close enough to my face to see through the peep sight without touching my face to the string. And with a high let-off bow like that, it's critical with a high let-off bow that you don't get any face contact with the string. Another thing is notice that when I put the release on, no matter what angle that I turn this, there's no torsion on the string at all. And again, with a high let-off bow, and not so much with a heavy indoor arrow, but with a super light outdoor arrow like a short X10 or short ACE or, you know, a 3D arrow, with torsion on the string, that can also broaden your groups at distance. It'll cause them to horizontally, well, it's kind of diagonal, but it'll cause them to horizontally open up just a little bit. And currently, the current world champion, Sebastian Pinot, Hornet Power, is also using our torqueless D-loop as well. He knows that he gets the best accuracy. And Sebastian has an issue with face contact on the string And one of the things that he does to get around it is when he's at full draw and anchored, he opens his teeth like that. That gets a little room around his chin so that way the string doesn't touch his chin and damages left and rights. So let's take a look here. I haven't adjusted the draw length on this bow yet. So I'm looking at it. I see there's a pin. Thank you, Hoyt engineers, for making sure that I can get to the screws without putting the bow in the press. I'm going to move this thing and see if I can still put the screws back in it outside of the press. But I got to move this thing 2 holes, so I'm pretty sure that it's a 1/2 inch per hole. So I'm going to move it 2 holes. And take a look at this. Rhonda, try to show right up here. You see this? They have all of the draw lengths that the cam will do listed right here in the top limb. How convenient is that, right? So I'm a 28 or maybe a little over 28, so I'm going to set it on the D position, and it appears right now we are in the F. So I'm right. I need to move it 2 holes. So I'm going to quickly do that. I'm going to lay this down. Let's see, we'll move this air out of the way so I don't bend that. Get all of these things out of the way, and let's see. Somewhere in here I do not have a Torx. I need that T15 Torx wrench. Do I have it in my pocket? I don't. So Jacob's going to go get a Torx wrench. Rhonda, do you see any questions over there that I can answer while he is going to get that?
I killed the comments on my screen. Can you bring them back?
Oh, let's see. Comments on the screen. Let's take a look here. Let's see. If I swipe up from the bottom, no. Here we go.
Okay.
Do you want to tag Darren Christianberry in this video? Yeah, I don't see why not. Jeremy wants to know how many carbs per serving. Okay, whatever, Jeremy. Let's see. Let me get my finger out of it. There we go. So that's Torx on both sides. I'm going to go ahead and move the
Have you had any problems with the Hamskea peep and your strings?
No, I haven't. I have heard that on the original Hamskea peep that there was an edge or two that may have been there. And did you find that?
Yeah.
Okay. Oh, you found the whole set. All right.
Yeah.
I had the Torx handle somewhere that I was trying to bring that I must have just laid it down. So I'm going to unscrew the anchor here. All right. And but the original Hamskea peep, when they first released, I understand that some people found some sharp edges on there, but they have totally revamped that. And if you have a Hamskea peep that is hard on your strings, just call them and they'll take care of it. There is also, they changed the design of the peep barrel just a little bit so that the hole in the peep is more centered with the string. And you can tell if you have one of those that the eyepiece, the part that you look through, is centered. There's 2 lines on the eyepiece. And if you have one of the newest ones, if you have 1 line on the eyepiece, the part that you look through from that direction, that's one of the older ones that isn't centered. So you can get with Hamskea, and they will make a plan with you in order to swap that baby out. So now I'm going to, I've moved that. So I had to take this anchor off and then unscrew this, unscrew it from this side of the cam here. And then I'm going to screw that back on and just make sure that it's tight. Let's see if I can do that without dropping it in the floor here and then having to crawl around to go get it. There we go. I was trying to put it on there backwards. Where's my little, get my smaller Allen wrench here, and well, that's not that small. Make sure that that's tight, and that is tight. Now I'll go up here to the top And I'll take this one out and move it to the D position. I always like to move the anchors first, because if I don't, I usually end up forgetting to move the anchors. I'm like, what's going on with this thing? The draw length didn't change like it's supposed to. So that would stop me from making that mistake again and again. All right, here we go. Let me move these. I'm just going to put these stabilizers down here in the floor, get them out of the way.
Craig Sams wants to know the torqueless D-loop will change your anchor.
It will, because you move from holding the string from behind the arrow, you end up holding it underneath the arrow. So you will have to lower your peep sight height by, I don't know, 3/16, 1/8 inch, maybe a quarter is kind of a seat of the pants guess, but your peep will end up being a little bit lower if you switch to a torqueless D-loop. And but it is definitely worth the trouble of readjusting your peep. Now I'm going to slide this. The manual said that you do not have to remove these screws all the way out, that 2.5 turns or so. Yeah, I actually read the manual. Can you believe it? So 2.5 turns or so will allow you to rotate the mod. And I'm super excited because I have just changed the mod position here on this cam, and I did not have to put it in the bow press. Yay! All right. So here we are. Let me spin this around. Now this one is new, so I'm going to have to go easy here and take a look and make sure that I know what I'm doing here. Alright, I felt that disengage. So I can see a little locator pin. Rhonda, maybe you can get in here. I'm going to use an Allen wrench to point. Right here, there's a little locator pin that allows me to make sure that I'm in the D position. You hear that just kind of snap into place. I'm going to do a quick spot check, and it appears that if I went all the way to the A position, the mod screw gets behind the limb. So you may need to work with it a little bit. But at 28 inches, lucky me, I don't have to change the mods, don't have to put the bow in the press to change the mod screws. Thank you, Hoyt engineers, for allowing me to move the mods without putting the bow in the press. I'll snug these up. I'm going to put this thing back in my LCA draw board here. Double check my draw length and make sure.
Two more questions.
Okay, go ahead.
Generic Burkett says, how does the cam compare to the DFX cam?
Well, I haven't shot it yet, other than the fact that it's much wider on the bottom and it's a higher let-off. Those are the two obvious comparisons to the DFX cam so far. But just seat of the pants, just pulling the bow back out of the box, it feels nicer to me. I wasn't in love with the HyperEdge, and I think it's partially because of the feel of the DFX cam is just so different for me. But this one, it feels pretty nice, you know, right out of the box. I'm still, it remains to be seen for me, am I going to be able to tolerate the let-off, because that is quite a bit different for me. But we shall see. I'm going to pull this back to full draw. I'm kind of keeping an eyeball on my timing as I go back to full draw here. And man, that's right on the button. Right out of the box. It's right on the button. Let's see.
I think you need one more click on your draw.
I need one more what?
One more click on the draw.
One more click on the draw? You sure? It's touching. Yeah, that's a little more solid. Okay, there we are.
Okay.
So they're both touching at the same time. Draw length is 28.25 with my current setup here. That is a dead up AMO draw length. It's 28.25. So I'm going to leave it right there because on my prevails I'm about 28.25. So Ooh, I don't like sticking my hand inside the string there. Safety hazard, don't do that. I don't like doing it either. I just caught myself, so
Colby
don't do
wants
that.
you to talk about the different sizes, or the size difference in the yokes, or on the top limbs.
There is no length difference in the yokes anymore. Used to, from the factory, they would put 2 twists in one and 4 or 5 twists in the other, to keep the cam balanced. But on this one, the yokes are exactly the same length because of the new anchors. This yoke looks a little deeper. Let me measure it. Normally they're like 8.5 inches. But let me check. That yoke looks to be like 10 inches. Well, it's 9. So the yoke itself doesn't look much longer. It's maybe an inch deeper than normal. But each side of the yoke is the same length. So when you make timing twists, you put a twist here, twist there. You just do them together in unison. So what else have we got, Jacob? Anything?
That's it.
Solid.
I saw when I looked at it, there was all kinds of stuff flying by. Or are you just ignoring Jeremy Beard's questions?
Yeah. Pretty much.
All right. So let's see. Maiden voyage. I also want to check the poundage, but I'll try it at whatever poundage it comes out at here. Well, let's take a look. You can scroll backwards, Jacob, if a question kind of got away from you.
George was kind of showing. I think he just kind of saying, didn't really see my question.
So the poundage went down 2 pounds. It's now 62. It was 64 before, wasn't it?
Yeah, 63 and some change.
63 and some change. Okay, so now it's 62 and some change. So it's 62.7 to be exact. So I'm going to leave it right there. Normally I would put this on like 55, 56, but I'm going to leave it right there, and I'm just going to shoot an arrow through the paper, and let's see what happens.
I do have another one.
Okay, what is it?
Does broadhead tuning give the same results as bare shaft tuning?
Bare shaft tuning, I went over that a minute ago. If you get a great bare shaft plane, typically your broadheads will fly pretty well. But I still like to make sure that my broadheads and my field tips hit together all the way, all of my distances. So, but yes, a good bare shaft tune, if the bare shaft hits at the same part as your flat shaft at, say, 20 yards, you can pretty much assume that your broadhead is going to hit with your field tips. But always test your broadheads just to make sure. I use Montec 100s, and I can resharpen those so I can shoot them as much as I want. I don't have to worry about it. So I'm going to hook this up here. Okay. This sling is a little tight on this bow. I made one that was a little longer, so I'm just going to go without and try to make sure that Gaius doesn't get his drop test that he was asking for. Let me just take a look, make sure the paper is kind of close. I want to make sure that this long arrow doesn't touch the bail while it's still in the paper. And you notice I'm using a wax paper. The stiffer the paper is that you use, the more it will conceal, what kind of tuning errors that you might have. So I try to make sure that I use soft paper, like wax paper, so that I can see everything. See if I have enough room here to back up with my light kit here. And here we go, maiden voyage. Let's see what it do. Let's see what we got here. It looks like it's a little high. It's a little bit high, and just a little bit to the. I should have went out just a little more on the rest, and I should have left the height of the rest the same. You remember I lowered it a little bit, so my original eyeball position was actually pretty decent. I'm going to move it right quick and just see how well it responds.
Can you explain paper tuning a little bit while you talk about that?
Okay, so paper tuning, if the tail end, the forked end right here is where the back of the shaft went in, and the round end down here, that's where the point of the arrow went in. So it tore up, and it tore a little bit to the right. So that tells me at first I need to raise the arrow rest a little bit, and that to the right, I would need to bring the rest out. But I'm going to do the knocking point first, because sometimes an adjustment in the knocking point also affects the left and right. So I'm going to raise the rest back to its original spot.
Does the bar angle affect your paper tune at all? Left or right?
It can if the bow is really out of balance. I will also double check my paper tune without the stabilizer bars on, because if the stabilizer bars change your paper tune, that means your stabilizers are not stabilizing the bow. It means the stabilizers are moving your bow at the instant that your release aid opens. So at first, the first shot, this thing was surprisingly soft shooting for being 62 pounds. I normally shoot much less weight than this, but it's surprisingly soft. Let me get these glasses off my nose so I can actually see through the peep sight. I didn't change very much in the height, even though I moved the arrow rest up a good bit. Let's see. Maybe a little. I'm going to try, my arrows might be a little weak for this bow and these cams. So I'm going to try, just go on instinct here. I'm going to turn the bow weight down just a little bit and see if that changes anything. 1, 2, I'm not sure how many pounds that is, but we can check that later.
A little more, how do you get the best spine match?
Well, you see, one of the things that I'm doing right now is I'm double checking to make sure that the arrow spine isn't a little weak for this bow setup, because I'm getting a tear through the paper that's somewhat contrary to what I think should happen. I was thinking it should have been a pretty good bullet hole right on the first shot, so there's a chance that the arrow spine might be a little off. So I back the bow out 2 pounds or 2 turns and see if that has an effect on the paper tear, and that'll let me know whether if it's the arrow spine or if I just need to move the rest a little more. Man, this thing is soft in the shot. It's quiet, too. Now, that changed the tear a good bit. So I think that's going to signal that my arrow spine, you see we went from here, this one up here, and to here. So that's going to signal that my arrow spine might be a shade on the weak side. I'm going to turn the bow down just a hair bit more. One more turn and see what that does. So if I was going to shoot this bow for indoors, really all I'd need to do is just cut a 1/2 inch off my arrow length and it would be perfect. But I'm going to let the poundage down one more turn, just so I can test this. Okay. Same arrow. Note I'm using the same arrow to eliminate, in case if I had a bad arrow or a weird knock or something, you know.
Why don't you check the alignment of your limbs before shooting through the paper?
What do you mean by alignment of the limbs? You mean cam lane?
Or you just said alignment of limbs first?
I'm going to assume that the way that they have these limbs pinched into position on the cams, and the way that they're mounted in the limb pockets, I'm not going to look that closely to it right now. I'm going to assume that they have this bow right, and I'm testing this to see how it does right out of the box. And in almost every case, for me, I don't have to do any weird black magic like shimming cams and things like that. So I'm just going to do this straight up, and if it doesn't tune for me right out of the box, then I'll look at it a little closer. But I suspect that it will once I figure out what the right arrow spine is and that sort of thing. But I see now that I backed the bow off a couple turns and it significantly changed the hole. So it's definitely spine related. So now we're dead right, so I can adjust that by moving the arrow rest out just a hair more, and that should be right on. Well, you know what? I'm not going to move the arrow rest out right away. I'm going to demo something right quick. Since I don't know what the stabilizer configuration is supposed to be on this bow, I'm going to take the stabilizers off and see what that does for the hole. And if it shoots a better hole, I'll just go back and double check where my stabilizer configuration and make sure that it still shoots well with and without the stabilizers.
How's your string angle with the ProForce feel versus your Prevail?
It feels very similar. And who asked that question?
That was Chris Cape.
Chris Cape. So it feels very similar to my Prevail. This bow is a little bit shorter than my Prevail. It's 36-ish, and the Prevail's 37. And I set my peep sight height exactly the same as my Prevail, and I might need to bring it up just a hair bit more. So the string angle is a little more, but it's not crazy. So check this out. So I took the stabilizers off and didn't move anything else, and we went from this hole here, which is just a little bit to the right, to dead up bullet hole. So I just need to go and check my stabilizer configuration and figure out what this bow needs. I predict that if I go from this bottom angle here, if I bring my stabilizer up here where I normally shoot it, I predict that that's going to fix my issue, and it's going to shoot a dead bullet hole with or without this setup. But the bow aims, it feels surprisingly still, and the shot is surprisingly soft. So I'm going to shoot it for a little while without any weight on the bars at all. Make sure that I have the draw length correct. Make sure that I have the stabilizers in the configuration that I want them to be in. And I'm going to slowly add the weight to the bow and watch the steadiness of the bow very closely to the point that the stability ends up breaking a little bit. So I'm going to take it right up to the point to where it starts to move again, and I will just leave it right there. So for now, I'm going to leave this on. I'm not going to worry about it quite so much. And I'm going to walk over in the range and shoot an arrow or two. And just because I'm anxious and I just want to shoot it a little bit, I'm going to shoot an arrow or two. We're going to walk out of the fancy studio lights and all that and go to the archery range and shoot the first few shots and just see what the thing feels like. So let me get my quiver belted on. Just give them a good close look at that bow there while I do that. I'll get my quiver belted on and we'll walk out the door here to the range. You see any other questions there, Jacob?
You know what you're doing?
Charlie Weinstein wants to know if you know what you're doing.
Charlie wants to know if I know what I'm doing. I try my best to know everything about what I'm doing, but it doesn't always work out that way, Charlie. So I just take a step and adjust as I go along. But so far we got a good bullet hole out of it. I just need to reset my stabilizer configuration. So now I'm just going to shoot it and see what it does. Let's go. Got this extension cord in the way. Try not to get it. You know what I'm saying? Boys threw the football through the Hoyt banner. I haven't replaced that yet. So I'm walking down to 10 yards. So the first shot that I let go out of the bow is at least going to be on the paper, hopefully. And I'm going to quickly dial it in and just see how it feels. When I turned the weight down, it changed my peep sight just a little bit, so I'll have to work on that just a little. Loose. Tighten that down. That's a little outside.
What degree grip do you have on there?
What degree grip? This is the 10 degree. UltraView 10 degree. UltraViewArchery.com. UltraViewArchery.com. All right, that's in the top of the tent. Now we can back up a little bit.
All right, we're down to 20%, so.
We're down to 20% battery. All right, so we're down to 20%. I'm gonna shoot a couple more shots, and we're gonna have to sign off here because my phone battery can't take all this. How long has this been going anyway?
Can you tell? I have no clue.
Mine's not telling me. See if I can try to figure it out. Over an hour.
Oh, really? Wow, an hour-long bow build video. But we got it done. We got a bullet hole. Got all the stuff on. I hope I answered all of y'all's questions.
Oh, hour 27 minutes.
Oh, an hour and 27 minutes. Wow. I had this pegged for 45 minutes. But, oh well, if you're still with us, I'm going to shoot this a little bit, and I'm going to post my full review with photos and a little bit more detail. You'll find some links to the technical manuals and a few things that Hoyt have for this setup and this cam configuration. And I'll put all that stuff up within a few days as quickly as I can, and so that you can have more information. And after I shoot this a little bit, I'm going to set it up as an outdoor bow and go outside and see how I like it as an outdoor bow. So we'll do that next. And second arrow at 20, it's in the 10. Okay. So that's 10, and it looks like a 10.
Shooting on left target?
I shot the Vegas, the gray background. It looks like it's in the bottom of the 10 ring, maybe.
Yeah.
It holds still, even though the stabilizer configuration is weird. It holds still. That's a little lower.
Can you explain the frame we have up above?
Oh, this frame that I have up above here, if you notice, it's made out of foam and it has a little wood backer. So if somebody does this and the bow goes off, the arrow won't hit my ceiling. So it kind of shades this area a little bit. So if you use fiber optics, it's, kind of bothersome, but it keeps arrows from hitting my ceiling. So, yeah, and the lights. So I set that baffle system up when we first opened to kind of reduce damage. It definitely holds still. When I backed the bow off of 3 or 4 turns, I think we ended up with, the draw length is now a little bit too long. So I'm going to have to tinker with that just a little bit. But I'm kind of liking this. The let-off, the high let-off will take some getting used to. But I'm still holding it pretty hard in the wall. Boom! That was a good one too. It's still just a little low.
So quiet.
It is quiet, yeah. I like it. Let's see, here's another spot I can shoot at. Let's see. So here we are. First 10 arrows out of the bow, and so far it's hitting the 10 anyway. So I'll work on it a little bit more. Ooh, dead on. There it is right there. So, ultraviewarchery.com to get this funky new grip. Hamskyarchery.com to get this awesome arrow rest. I don't know their email. It's Trueball XL. I think it might be trueballxl.com or trueball.com or truarchery.com. I'm not sure. Just type Trueball Archery and you'll be able to find the site online. You can get all this from Archery Learning Center, Lancaster Archery, or wherever. Come see us. I'll let you shoot this bow. If you're anywhere nearby local and want to try it, I'll leave it set up in here and you can shoot an arrow or 2 out of it and decide if you want one for yourself. But so far, this is really cool. And once I've shot some outdoor arrows with it at distance and really tuned it out, I'll know for sure. But on the surface, I really like it. So more on this later. Check my website, extramiddle.com, for a blog post about this, and I'll have all the important stuff, the tech manuals and all that ready for you later. But until then, see you guys later.